to Pat.
Thanks so much, Linda, and thanks everyone who's hanging in with us today. So it's been a really fabulous day, hasn't it? So I think in the morning, Matt kicked us off with some really great thoughts and some really great examples of customer communication. I loved his ending line of let's just be human when we're communicating. It's something that sometimes gets lost, especially with all the different types of customer communication that we're involved with. But look, here's the truth. In every generation, there's some technology that changes the way we do business. And right now, production workflow automation, as you've been hearing about all day, I believe that this is the time for this technology. And it's not new technology by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that today all the pieces are in place, the standards are in place that make it possible to craft a really amazing workflow that takes a lot of the touch points, a lot of the potential risk points out of the workflow, at the same time that it streamlines it and makes it possible for you to weather any type of crisis, including needing to send workers home to get their work done, including trying to continue to get the business of doing business managed. So, communication, it is a manufacturing business, and communication is print, communication is e-delivery, communication is mobile delivery. If we had a way to do variable data skywriting, so that everybody saw something different, that would be a manufacturing business. Everything that we do is a manufacturing business because there are components that have to come together in just the right order at just the right time, that and in such a way that you actually know for sure that you have arrived at the product that you intend to have at the end. Apologies on the video. It was started and I accidentally turned it off. So it is a manufacturing process. If you aren't today thinking about what you're doing as a manufacturing process, this is the time to start, because that will help you develop this workflow mindset, because the infrastructure of this workflow mindset is going to involve identifying every single touch point that you have, and you've heard about a lot of them. John Slaney did a great job with his diagrams of showing all the touch points. Certainly what you saw in Harvey and Kevin's presentation identified it, but even what you heard from Kevin Roman, all of these things come together to and do form this manufacturing process. But you need to take a couple steps back. You need to realize that there are your production manufacturing workflows and there are your business workflows. And in our businesses, there's a lot of crossover. There is a lot of point of trying to gather data that are part of the business workflow, but also part of the production workflow. And then there's part of the production workflow that needs to be informing the business workflow. So on the business side, think about it as all of the things that happen in order to get a job sold, bring it on board, get it ready for invoicing, get it into production, but also get it into invoicing, right? It's all of the things that are required to inform how the business is doing on any given day of the week. The production workflow is the act of that manufacturing of the communication that is going to be sent out according to the service level agreements and other delivery protocols that we have. So think about your two workflows. When was the last time you walked your workflow? When was the last time that you actually took a couple steps back and watched a job come in the door and go through every single step, and then went out the door and came back around and made sure that the billing was accurate, that all the change processes that might have required additional billing to be applied actually got applied? When was the last time you did that? Because in the end, if you don't do that on a regular basis, you lose track of what's going on. Harvey said that you could ask 100 people what the definition of workflow was and get 110 answers back. And I love that because it is so true. I think over, the last 20 years, 30 years, if I'm honest, 40 years, the concept of workflow has always been a part of my life. And in every kind of job I've had, the definition of workflow was a little bit different. But in the end, I'm going to steal one that my colleague Ryan Maccabee over at Keypoint Intelligence developed. He said it was the repeatable and auditable tasks, events, and processes used to consistently move work from job onboarding through to completion. And that some or all of those tasks may be automated. And for my money, the more of those, and actually for your money too, the more of those tasks that are automated, the better off you're going to be. Because the sad fact is that most of us don't really understand our workflow. I've had customers say during assessments that, oh, look, our workflow just evolved. We had to add this tool, we had to add this tool because of this customer requirement, that customer requirement, and I get that. But it's not okay for workflows to evolve organically. No matter what you've heard, workflow actually takes management because it is controlling that manufacturing process. And if you don't have a workflow strategy, and if you don't have the combination of strategy and the tactics to enable that strategy, your workflow becomes amazingly chaotic. And the really sad thing is that when you talk to business owners, and maybe all of you have had this conversation, I've had it quite a bit. The picture on the left is the one that they show you. This is our workflow, and it's lovely, isn't it? And again, thanks to Ryan for pulling that one together. It just, to me, embodies what everybody thinks workflow really is. But you know what? It's what's on the right that is the reality of workflow. And in that green box over there, oh, spreadsheets, sticky notes, whiteboards, email, voicemails, scribbled notes on the back of a napkin, you name it, we have seen it at some point or another in a workflow assessment. And unfortunately, in that reality, there is no way to be as efficient as you should be. What you're really striving for is a workflow that allows you to identify every single touch point and to automate as many of those touch points as possible so that you don't wind up in a constant set of loops, right? So think about the reality of how a job might come in. A lot of you I know are transaction communication printers. And so a lot of the work is sold once and then it's write many, right? You do the same job over and over and over again. But we all know those jobs change over time, right? Customer needs to change a logo. They need to change a signature. They need to change some images out. Over time, everything changes, right? It's never the exact same thing every single time. So how do you find out about a change? Is it calling a CSR? Is it an email? Do they upload to a Dropbox? How are those changes communicated? Do they have to be approved? If they have to be approved, what's the approval loop? Oops, we didn't get the right signature piece in there. We didn't get the right version of the logo on there. How many loops might it take in order for that to actually be fixed? Once we actually get it out into production, we put it on the wrong paper. Maybe we notice, maybe we don't, but if we notice, then we maybe have to rerun that job. There are so many things that you can do in your workflow to prevent all of these loops from happening. And certainly what you saw in Harvey and Kevin's presentation gives you a really great path to making sure that the loops are kept down to an absolute minimum. Because in the end, every time a person has to touch a job, for whatever reason, it is costing you money, and you don't want it to do that. That's why you don't want workflows to grow organically, to fill the available void and the available number of people to do those touch points. You want to create your workflow in such a way that it is as touch-free as possible and as lights out as possible, so that what you can do is then free the humans to do the things that humans do best, which is solve problems, right? That's what we're looking for. And this is this workflow mindset that you absolutely have to develop. Look, when we go out and we ask, and I still talk to a lot of printers on a week-to-week basis about their workflows, and whether I'm talking to a transaction producer or I'm talking to a commercial printer or I'm talking to somebody who's doing direct mail, you get a few common answers. One is, you know, our workflow is really good. Don't worry about it. It's all good. We don't have any issues. Life is fabulous. Okay. Then the next thing we hear, you know, we're on the road to automation. You know, we kind of automated a little here. We automated a little there. But we got it under control. We know where we're going. Okay. Then we get the, yeah, we're good. We know we could change a few things. We know we could automate this. We know we could automate that. But it wouldn't change anything, really. It's just everything is, you know, it's really good. And then my favorite is, you know, our workflow is terrible. It's not working for us at all. People are on the phone all the time. Everything's coming in by email and by text message and all manner of other things. But it's just going to cost us too much to change it. If any of these sound familiar to you, this is exactly the workflow mindset we need to change. Because in the end, there are fabulous solutions for any size company, any segment of company, no matter what it is you're producing. You need a workflow mindset that is open. You need a workflow mindset that on a regular basis is asking the hard questions about, is this tool that I've bought working for me? Am I using it correctly? I've had some turnover in staff. Maybe the new staff isn't using the tool as effectively as the originally trained staff was. And as a result, your workflow is suffering. If your workflow mindset is to leave it all alone because, well, work's getting out the door, it's the wrong workflow mindset. What you want to do is ask just 5 questions. Start here. Just start with these. As soon as we're done this afternoon, run right back to your desk, you know, or wait till tomorrow. Ask if every job comes in using the same protocols. I've been in shops where every person who's responsible, every CSR or every salesperson actually has a totally different protocol for how the job comes in. It's true in transaction shops. It's true in DM shops, in commercial shops. My favorite are the companies that have multiple onboarding systems, right? Multiple web facing their customers, where every customer has a different web facing portal, and they're actually not capturing the same information from every customer, because over time it's grown organically, and it was the job specification capture process wasn't documented. Every job should come in captured in the same way so that the specifications you need to complete the work are presented in the same way to the process every single time. And if that's not your case, this is a great time to fix it. When there's a problem, how do you resolve it? Does one person do a lot of email, another one makes phone calls, maybe another one's doing text messages, maybe there are some tags in your web interface with your customers? If there's not one process for getting a problem resolved, for getting a missing file found, for getting an approval on a new signature, you need one. You need one process that every single person follows, and follows in the same way. This is a good time to ask if you really know what your jobs cost. In an awful lot of places, we discover they don't. I had a client say to me once that they don't actually know what any job costs them to print until about 6 to 8 months after the job is delivered to the customer, because it takes them that long to figure out what they actually paid for the paper, what they actually paid for the consumables, what they were paying for time, and what their allocations of structural costs were, right? So, you know, in the end, this is a good thing to learn. It's also a good idea to figure out if you're billing the jobs out correctly. I had another customer say to me, yeah, we probably don't bill about 10% of the work that we do. It's a guess, but we think it's about 10%, because a lot of change requests come in, but we're not really documenting them. They're calling people, you know, like they call the CSR they know, the CSR calls the person they know in the next, you know, area. They get it fixed. That might require some number of hours of work to get it fixed, but you know, and we record it, but you know, a lot of times that never gets back around to billing to bill the customer, even though it's in the contract, we should be billing them. This is what happens when you don't have a workflow mindset that includes process and procedure and structure, and we really want that. So this is the time to do that moonshot thinking, right? To grab your duct tape, your baling wire, your bubble gum, whatever the 3 things you have in your back pocket are, and start thinking about your workflow infrastructure. It is what makes everything run. And if you don't treat it that way, you're not going to get the benefit from it. A fabulous tool like ProConductor is only as good as how you use it, right? So you want to be the one who's using it as effectively as possible. You want to make sure your people are as well trained as possible. And the other thing that you want to make sure of is that you understand every touch point in that workflow, so that as we run into situations like this, where maybe there aren't people sitting at every single desk and there aren't resources on site to solve every problem, there are fewer problems to deal with because most of it is automated, because that's our goal. So here's a couple of tricks. Start with understanding your site right now. An awful lot of companies don't know what they don't know. And here are 4 things you should absolutely know about the workflow that runs your business. You should understand everything that you are selling today, every type of product. And if you are not thinking about the work that you sell today, whether it's print and deliver, or it's print or it's deliver via email, or it's both for the same customer, you need to know what you're selling, and you need to understand all the components that go into it so that you can get these jobs on board as quickly as possible. You need to understand your whole onboarding process, and you need to streamline it, because job onboarding is the single biggest leak in every single company. From transaction to DM to commercial to packaging to labels, it doesn't matter. It is the single biggest leak point, and we don't want the leak points. Make sure you understand your production and you understand your mailing, your emailing, your delivery protocols, because again, there is a huge leak point there. It comes out of walking your workflow. And if you can walk your workflow, try this as a map, right? Again, this is something that we developed when I was still a Key Point. Ryan Maccabee, who I mention frequently because he's been my partner in crime for workflow for the last 4 years. What we know is that most companies don't understand all the touch points. If you don't know your touch points, grab a copy of this and start walking through and identifying all the people who are part of these touch points. Because I got to tell you, it can be an amazing group of people. Years and years ago, a colleague at Kodak, Tim Donahue, created this UML model for me, Unified Modeling Language model for me, to help me understand how many people actually touched transaction print. And as we added more and more, we worked on this back and forth for about 6 months. And we probably still didn't get everybody, but we started to understand that there are an awful lot of people in the workflow mix. And every time somebody touches a job, a piece of work, there's money attached to it. Try building one of these for your site. How many loops do things go through? How many people touch a job? How many people are making decisions? This is something you want to understand. And you want to really understand your channel support as well. How many outbound channels do you have? How many forms of print? How many forms of print and deliver, print and mail? How many e-delivery formats are you supporting? Email, to an app, to a text message. There are more, and there are more coming. right? Every time we turn around, there's some new way. 5 years ago, we weren't really talking about delivering secure information to apps. And now in a lot of places, that's the primary way they want to deliver information. So you need to know what all you're supporting, and you need to understand all the ways that information will come at you. That's how you develop that workflow mindset. The other thing you need is that ability for as many people as possible to see the workflow status for all the work coming through. And Kevin did a great job of showing the real value proposition there, right? The ability to dive in and not only see at a high level what's going on, but the ability to dive in and see the more discrete status. It's absolutely essential to your workflow. If you don't have this capability, you need it as fast as you can get it. And if you have this capability, have a chat with, Kevin and Harvey and Scott and the team about if you are using it correctly, if you are using it to its best extent, because you want to have as clear a view as you can and be able to dive into the bits and pieces that are going to help you run your business better. This is a great time to be taking on that piece of developing a workflow mindset, because errors cost money. If you're rerunning job, if things are going through approval processes too many times, if you are finishing incorrectly, if you're stuffing into the wrong size envelopes, the wrong kind of envelopes, everything that you do costs you money. So in the North American Software Investment Outlook that was done for calendar 2019 by Keypoint, one of the questions that was asked was about how many errors lead to discarded print work. And we got an earful. Bad data design, wrong setup by the operator, press problems, finishing errors, mistakes in quoting or in the order process meant that the job got printed incorrectly. Your workflow may not experience these things and your waste may not be at these levels, but I'm pretty sure that if you go check, you have some waste that's due to the lack of the workflow mindset and the protocols and the documentation of those protocols that give you that best view and that best opportunity. Because everybody tells us that they have workflow bottlenecks. Even since this one came out, this is the North American forecast from the previous year. But even when I've done some private surveys for clients around workflow bottlenecks, these same 5 keep coming up over and over and over again. And it doesn't matter what type of printing company or communication company it is. Everyone identifies workflow bottlenecks, and most of the time they have the tool to solve the problem already installed and in use, but they just haven't rethought how they're operating to use the tools they have. So if you're experiencing bottlenecks, this is the time to be talking to your vendors. This is the time to have the chat with Lee or with Scott or with Kevin or with any of the other members of the Crawford team about how they can help you rid yourself of these bottlenecks. Because that's essential to the workflow mindset and to that manufacturing process that you should be running. And it's essential to automation because, frankly, the more automated you are, the fewer bottlenecks you're going to have. When things happen, there will be people there who can solve them. It won't be a daily occurrence, and you don't want it to be a daily occurrence. I've said several times that I want you to walk your workflow. I want you to go find the bits and pieces. These are the things to go look at. And if this looks like a lot to deal with, if it looks like too much to do on your own, let me tell you, there are people who will help. I know the team at Crawford can help you. I know I can help you. I know the folks at Keypoint can help you. I know that there are any number of consultants in our industry who've been around as long as I have, and Kevin has, and Harvey has, and Scott and the whole crew have, who would be delighted to help you fix your workflow and help your team develop that workflow mindset. But I want to warn you of one thing. You may have heard the term digital transformation, and digital transformation is a rinse, lather, or lather, rinse, repeat process, right? Developing a workflow mindset is also a lather, rinse, repeat process. It's not a one and done. You have to keep doing it. You have to keep walking your workflow. You have to keep trying to tune it. You have to keep watching for feature updates from your vendors, of your hardware vendors and your software vendors, because workflow mindset is forever once you develop it, and you want it to be forever. So I want you to watch for signals and noise, follow the data, right? Grab as much data as you can and make sure that you can monitor it. A great dashboard is a great start. Figure out what the people in your processes are doing. See if they're doing the right job. See if you can find the secret spreadsheets that everybody has under their keyboard that is actually running your workflow instead of the tools that you may have invested in. If you find them, this is a great time for a re-education camp about why you've bought tools to automate your workflow. Follow the jobs and understand every piece of them, and follow the money to make sure that you're verifying that everything is billed. Because if you do these things and you lather, rinse, repeat, you're going to develop that workflow mindset. Now, I want to tell you a story while I have your attention. I have done a lot of workflow assessments. Sadly, I have done workflow assessments in the same locations across multiple years. And very often what happens is there's an initiative. We're going to fix the workflow. Good, let's go fix the workflow. And RFPs are issued to all of the current vendors. Tell us the best that you have. Tell us how you can fix things. Okay, RFPs come back. We look at everything and go, yeah, okay, gee, that feature would be cool and that feature would be cool. Good. Spend a little bit of time, and then the cost estimate comes in. Oh, we're not going to spend that amount of money. No. We are not spending that amount of money. Okay. So what are we going to do? We're going to go back and we're just going to keep on doing what we're doing because it's working right now. Everything is fine. Is everything really fine? It probably isn't. Because almost inevitably, another 2 years down the road, get the same phone call. Hey, can you come look at our workflow? We're having some bottlenecks. We're having some of this. We're having some of that. Can we do a little this? Can we do a little that? Well, yeah, we can. Go back in, do it all again, and the exact same process happens. Don't be that customer. Don't be that client. Don't be that company. Right now, by sitting here listening to this, you've gotten some amazing advice over the course of the day about all of the possibilities to upgrade what you're doing, to become more ready than you have ever been for whatever comes next, for whatever your business will look like over the next 6, 9 months or a year. You've gotten some amazing advice on how to take a hard look at the capabilities of all of the devices, the hardware devices. You've gotten some great information from Casper on what the market looks like, right? You've gotten some great advice on how to think about the orchestration of your business and the orchestration of your workflow. But now you've got to act. Now you actually have to go back to your desk and look at how it is you're doing the work that you're doing. You need to assess your workflow against the reality of the work that you're doing today and work as it will happen over the next 6, 9 months, 18 months. You need to figure out if you have the right products in place, the right training has been done on those products, and you need to figure out if everybody on your team is on board with using the tools that you have in order to ensure that jobs move through in the fastest and most effective way possible. Go back and take a look at all of the tools that are installed in your environment. Are you using all of them? Are you paying maintenance on tools you're not using anymore? In an average engagement, I'll find 5 or 6 tools that haven't been touched in a decade, and yet maintenance may still be paid on them. Think about that money and having that back in your pocket. In an average engagement, I'll find an amazing workflow tool that's only half installed or only half used. Don't be that company. If you've paid money for a tool, use it and use it for all it's worth, because that's how you develop that accurate and effective workflow mindset. Isn't that rocket science? It's really just business process. And everybody can do it. Doesn't matter how small your company is, how big your company is, how many sites your company has. All of this is possible for you. But in the end, you want a workflow mindset. So Linda, that's my story. The last couple of slides, clearly I'm here to help. And people can find me. I've got to be the easiest person on the internet to find. You just stick my name into a search engine and I'll pop up, except for Friday nights when it's a football coach in Oklahoma from some high school who tends to come up at the top of the list. But and it's got the wrong email address on it, I just realized too. It's got the Key Point Intelligence one. But basically, what you can do is just reach out to me, PCM at McGrew Group. It's on the, it's right there. You'll find me, and I'll be delighted to share with anybody everything I know.
Well, Pat, that was an amazing session. Great advice for everybody. I'm sure many people took away some great tips. I will open it up. If you have any questions for Pat, you can go ahead and type them into the chat box, and I'll go ahead and read them to her. But I do have a couple of questions that have already come in. So the first one I have is, I have really smart workflow people who have been handling things for decades. Why should I automate when everything is fine today?
So if they've been your workflow people for decades, they might be considering retirement soon. Just putting that one out there is sort of the first thing that would jump to mind. Look, no matter how smart your people are, they're never going to be as fast as automated workflow in making decisions and keeping the work moving. Why not use those people to, 1, help you get automated, and 2, be your problem solvers for the things that get tripped up during the automation? Every company has some special jobs that they do. Every single company has the problem job that, we're not going to ask the customer to fix it. We're just going to fix it when it gets here. Everybody's got those. Use your smart people for that. But start to think about succession planning if you haven't. A lot of people in workflow that I meet are my age, Kevin's age, Harvey's age. We've been around a while. And an awful lot of people, look, I've got to tell you this one. I got a phone call from a major healthcare insurer a few years back. They had really smart people in their workflow, and they had built a really amazing custom workflow. One morning, one of the gentlemen who was responsible for a piece of that workflow that grabbed data and populated customer communication with variable data decided that he was going to retire. He'd been thinking about it for a while. Everybody laughed when he said it. He kept talking about going fishing, but nobody thought he was really going to do it. And he handed in his notice one Wednesday morning and said, yeah, I checked with HR and they say I can be gone on Monday. So they all laughed, and then they got scared, and then he left. And 2 weeks later, there was a problem with a data feed because a client that fed data into their system had made some little change, some, added a record, how hard could it be, right? Well, all of a sudden, that whole very carefully crafted custom workflow didn't work anymore. And there was not a soul there who could figure out what to do to fix it. And he wasn't kidding. He went off fishing, changed his phone number, wouldn't answer any emails, nothing. And it's not a unique situation. So I got a phone call asking if I could come in and interpret some combo code that was partly, here's reaching back into your memory brackets, IBM DCF script code that was wrapped in COBOL. And that's what was a major part of their bespoke workflow.
Wow.
This is why you need to think about automating your workflows so your smart people are available for doing these kinds of things, but also so they can start educating the people coming up behind them, right? Because that's going to be the other really important piece is, are you educating your next generation?
Right. Yeah, you want to make sure you give the really smart people those best tools, right?
Absolutely. And think about most of the sites that I go to, I think a lot of the people in the room, probably have a mix of composition engines that they have to deal with. I still find, Prez. I find PrintNet T, the early original GMC, still find it running. I still find people running DocuMerge from the 80s. And I laughed when Kevin said that he came into the industry in 85. I came into this piece of the industry in 82. I've been working long, I'm older than that, but I came into this piece of the industry in 82. And some of those systems are still around and still in use. No.
Yeah.
And if we don't train the next generation, it's going to be a little interesting.
There you go. Okay, I've got a couple of other questions. So I have 3 different web to print systems to onboard jobs because my customers demanded I use the one they wanted. Am I stuck with this?
I want to say no. So I hear this a lot. My customer demanded that I use a web to print system that they were comfortable with. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is never agree to that, right? We're all sophisticated enough. The goal here should be to make sure that any web to print system that you host that faces your clients is capable enough to be branded for them, locked down in terms of the kinds of work they're allowed to submit, and should be easy to use. And there are a ton of solutions in the marketplace right now that can help you do that. Running 3 just, it triples your load. But here's what you can do. You can look at aggregating the inbound web to print files so that they meet a certain set of specifications. So this is where workflow automation really does shine. Its ability to, your ability to build an automated workflow that watches each one of the feeds come in from each one of the workflow web to print environments and interrogates it to make sure that all the information needed is really there. Because in the vast majority of cases where I see workflow hangups, the loops start at the point where the web to print arrives and it's not complete, because that web to print system doesn't require fields and doesn't require the completion of all the fields in order to disallow a customer from sending things that aren't complete. So if you can automate a system, you can develop an automated system that will read all of it, interrogate it, make sure that all of the information you need is there, effectively putting like a 5GL on top of your web to print to normalize all the inbound job requirements, right? All the job sheets, so that when it goes to that next step, all the jobs have the same kind of information and behave in the same way. And that's where, have a chat with the Crawford team about how to try and build a normalized inbound system. They've got a lot of ways they can help you there, but don't wait. Whatever you do, don't wait. And whatever you do next time a customer says, oh, you can't get my work unless you use my web to print, have a better solution than saying yes.
Good point. Good point. Okay, a couple more. We've got a couple more minutes here. So all of my sales are through brokers. How do I train them?
So this is again a place where automation can help. So there's two facets to that, right? Brokers notoriously don't want to be trained. And they are notoriously able to say to you, oh, well, I just sent you the job. It's not my responsibility to actually do anything to make sure it'll print. So what you want to do is stand up something that they can use to bring the job to you and onboard it. So if you don't have an existing web to print system, and when we say web to print, we really don't mean web to print. What we mean is web to workflow. Right? At the end of the day, all we're doing is capturing all the specifications and all of the assets that go with the job and trying to bring them in a normalized way so that the job can flow through with as few errors and few challenges as possible. So if you don't have a web to print system, this is a great time to look at one and stand one up that you train your brokers to use. Mm-hmm. Now, some brokers might say, oh, well, not me. I promise you that they recant that. At the end of the day, if you make it easier for them to get the job to you, it's better for them. If you can normalize the process for them so that they're just typing things in a certain way, what I have seen done is apps built for iPads and phones so that the broker just has to kind of type in on their phone or on their tablet and not even send an email, right? Because a lot of the broker relationships end up being email and phone relationships. And in the end, you want to kind of get away from that if you possibly can. So consider a web to print solution and then get them trained, right? Even if you have to throw in a party right now is a little tricky. Maybe you could do the virtual party. You send a bottle of wine to each one of them and invite them to a virtual training session. I know that some vendors are doing that. That's another idea.
There you go. There you go. Okay. And we have one final question. So my workflow is too complex to document. Why should I bother?
Not possible. Keep going.
Hey, why should I bother?
One, right now you are living in the world of risk. Without complete documentation of your end-to-end workflow, how do you pass an audit at this point? How do you pass a compliance audit? Without that, you are at risk. In a disaster recovery situation, not just this where we had to send everybody home, but think about Katrina, Katrina the hurricane, not Katrina the Crawford employee. Right, when so many printers we know and so many service providers we know discovered that they couldn't move their work because nobody actually knew what all the pieces and parts were. If you think it's too hard to document, I promise you there are people who can help. It sounds like this might be a case where there are multiple workflows, right? Where it's grown organically. The trick is to break it down into parts, right? Mm-hmm. Start by capturing your job onboarding processes. Just capture that. Just figure out what that is. Once you understand that, start to think about how to normalize it, and then ask each department to document how they do their job.
Right.
One client went so far as putting a GoPro camera on their pre-press team and literally had every one of them just let the camera run all day. And then he went back and he looked at the cameras to figure out what they all did all day. He wrote a baseline, a kind of outline of what the processes were. And when he took it back to them, they all had heart attacks. They had no idea what they were doing. Oh, wow. Because it was just second nature, Oh, well, I always go talk to Tom about this one. Every time this kind of job comes in, I always talk to Mary. Every time this happens, I always do this. But they hadn't really internalized it. And it allowed them to create a standardized workflow.
Great. Great. All right. Well, that's all we have for you today, Pat. Again, I just want to thank you for joining us today and sharing this. It was really, it was amazing. It was amazing.
It's
So
always my pleasure, and everybody feel free to ping me if I can help.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. You have a great day.
You too.
Take care. Bye bye.